Hi boys and girls! Today we're going to do a project based off of what we learned last time about rainbow order and the color wheel. Remember last time we talked about how the rainbow has a specific order, and with that order we have created a color wheel. The color wheel goes in that same order, so red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. And you can use this tool or your rainbow to help you remember color families. The warm color family is on one part of it, red, orange, yellow. The cool color family, purple, blue, and green. You can use these to help you make some really nice looking birds that coordinate really well. You have a couple options today. As you're doing your work, I want you to be creative and change up things however you want them. So I know you're following along with a step-by-step video with me, but if there's anything that you want to do different, please do it, because I want your work to be expressing your creativity. Everyone's work should look a little bit different at least, and putting your own ideas and extra details into your project. So what I mean by that is, today's project is birds, and birds can be super simple to draw, and there's hundreds of different ways that you can draw them. So you still get the same idea that these are birds, even though I have mostly just drawn half circles. These birds are standing on top of each other, which makes it a little bit more fun. You also have the option of drawing your birds, and this is a really long paper that I had, on a log. Maybe they're hanging out on a tree branch. And your birds here are in the shape of a circle with beaks and wings added. You have another option, and I haven't colored this one yet, I'll probably color it with you, of creating your birds hanging out on maybe a telephone wire. Because you know, when you look up on the telephone poles and the electrical wires, a lot of times you'll see birds just hanging out all in a row. They're waiting up there, right? So be creative. Think of whether you want your birds to be stacked on top of each other, whether you want them to be hanging out on a tree branch, or even on the telephone wire up in the sky, okay? If you have another idea that doesn't include what I've just told you, that's okay too. You can just have a bunch of birds all on your paper or whatever you come up with. Today you're gonna need one piece of paper, hopefully one that does not have lines, a pencil, that way you can erase if you make mistakes, and a marker to trace on top of your lines so that they stand out. Remember, I use marker to begin with, that way you can see my lines nice and bold as I'm drawing. You'll also need your box of crayons, a couple of cool colors like green, purple, and blue, and then a couple of warm colors like red, orange, and yellow, and then any other colors you want to include in your project. And the last supply is optional. I have a set of watercolors. If you have watercolors at home, that would be excellent. If you don't, you do not have to go buy some. However, some of the school supplies may be on sale now since it's after the start of the school year, so you may be able to find some kind of cheap at the store, but you can ask your parents. If they don't want to get you some, that is perfectly fine. You do not have to have them for this project. When you start, you can either keep your paper portrait, which is the long edge going up and down, or you can take it and turn it to go landscape, which means the long edge is going across left to right. If your birds are going to be hanging out on a tree branch or even a telephone wire, then you would want your paper to go this long ways across like this one here. So if you're starting out with your birds on a tree branch or a telephone wire, you may want to go ahead and draw a line going straight across your paper. I gave it a little bit of a curve. My last one was super curved, where my birdies look like they're kind of weighing down on the wire. Just a slight curve is probably better. And then if you're gonna turn it into a tree branch, you could just add another line, making this nice and thick so it looks like it's a thick branch that they can hang out on. If you're making it a telephone wire, you would just want to color this line a couple times so it's a little bit thicker than what it is here. I'm going to add a couple of horizontal lines, that means lines that are going across, to make it look like some wood bark on your tree. And sometimes I do these little ovals, messy ovals, to make it look like the knots on the wood. Later on, we can color this in with brown, that way people get the idea that it's supposed to be a tree branch. Now we're going to start with our birds. I'm going to go back and forth between two different papers to show you how you can create your birds. Your birds can have all different sizes and shapes to their body, okay? I am including this picture of Wacky birds, and it shows you different ways to draw the eyes, the bodies, beaks, feet, tails, even add things to the top of the head and the wings. This is included underneath this video in your Schoology so that you can see how you can change up your bird to make it a little bit different than mine. If you feel like you need to follow along with mine, that's okay too. So on the body, you can make a half circle, you can make it like an oval, you can make it more of a rounded triangle. There's so many different ways you can do this. So I'm going to do a couple different styles. My first one is going to be in the middle, and I'm going to make him a oval. An oval looks kind of like an egg or a circle that's kind of smushed. I'm going to give him some skinny little legs at the bottom, making sure that they touch your tree branch. After you've done that, you want to give him some eyes. I'm also going to color inside that eye just a little bit to make the pupil, which is the black part of the eye. For his beak, I am going to make the top of a triangle, and then I'm going to do that shape again, which looks like a letter V connecting. So you've made a diamond, and this is his little beak. I'm adding two little lines just to show his little nostrils. Now, for his wings, we are looking at this bird straight on, which means we're not going to see all of his wings. We're just going to see a little bit of it. So I'm going to make a line that goes a little below his eyes, starts below his eyes, but on the side, goes out and curves back to the side. Same thing over here, a little bit below the eye, goes out a little bit, and then curves back to the side. For the top of his head, I'm going to give him a couple little feathers. These look like upside down raindrops. Now he kind of looks like a little Angry Bird guy. If you would like, you can make a couple little markings across the bottom of his wings to show the separation of the feathers. So this is one way you can draw a bird. If you are making a stack of birds, your birds can be this shape, or they can also be this half circle shape, a semicircle. So I have my paper. Since I'm going to be making a stack, my birds are going to go up across my paper. I'm going to have my paper portrait, which means this long edge is going up and down. Close to the bottom of my page, I'm going to make a really large bird. So what I'm going to do is make a line going across from left to right, not all the way across my page. I have a little bit of space here, but it is pretty long. Now I'm going to take and connect this part of my line to the other end by making the shape of a upside down rainbow, or you could like a smiley face. So if you need to practice this before you do it, you can draw it with your hand, and that teaches your brain and trains it what kind of line you're going to be making so that it gives it some practice. So now I've connected my line. You can see my semicircle. Of course, my birdie needs some legs. I can check out this sheet and see all the different styles of legs I can give him. I'm gonna make it pretty simple. 2 little lines, and I'm gonna draw 2 more lines going out to the side to show his little feet. Now for his eyes, if you want to use this sheet to come up with some fun, crazy eyes, you can. But on this bird, we're looking at him on the side. So we're only gonna see one eye. So I can pick which way I want him looking. If he faces this way, his eye would be over here. If you think he's facing this way, his eye would be over here. So I'm gonna start here, give him a nice big eye. Once again, I'm gonna draw inside the black part, the pupil of the eye. And now he needs a little beak over here. The beak has to be on the same side as the eyeball. Your beak can be as simple as a sideways letter V or a little triangle pointing out. If you want to make it a little more in depth, you could also go from that point out a little bit further, and now he has a bigger beak. For his wings, wings can be all different shapes like we see here. I'm going to just make some little curves, almost like it's a little puff of a cloud. I'm not even gonna connect it. I like it open. If you wanna connect it, you can. So I have one bird complete on both of my pictures. My next bird, if you're doing the tower of birds where they're stacked on top of each other, you would leave a little bit of space for some feet and then do the same thing again. Your birds can be these half circles. I'm gonna do some different feet this time. Let's see. I'm gonna make him facing the opposite way. So I have my half circle, his little feet. I'm gonna put his eye going the other way. And of course, he needs a beak. And something over here for his wings. I just drew another little half circle in here. If I want to, I can also add something to the top of my bird, on the top of his head. So something that's super easy is a line going up and another line going up, and you can add little circles to the end of that. Now if I only do 2, it's gonna look like antenna that you would have on a insect. So instead I'm going to draw 3. So now it looks more like it's just feathers coming up the top of his head. On this guy, I'm gonna give him some swirly feathers, go up and curve around like I'm gonna make a circle, but going in. Same thing. Looks like he has a crazy hair day. Now, the next bird, if you are doing yours over here, you can draw this same style of bird on top of your branch. He does not have to be all circles over here. I'm gonna show you another style of a bird, and this could be drawn on a bird that's on a wire or a branch, or you could even draw it for your birds that are stacking. But I just wanna show you how many different styles of birds you can do. So right here, I'm going to make a round, almost like a backwards letter C, and then I'm gonna curve back and make a point. This, now that I'm looking at it, reminds me of a sideways raindrop. And I'm gonna give him some funny long legs. And this is gonna be his tail. So over here is where you're gonna put his eye. So we need a nice big circle. Another one inside for the black part, the pupil. And then of course he needs a beak. Your beaks can be all different shapes. This one I made it a little more rounded instead of the pointy beaks like we've been doing. I'm gonna give him some little fluff on top of his head. And I am going to give him some feathers here. Let's see. So that you can see the shape of his wings. Do you notice how I'm just kind of going at it, making my birds all different, okay? So now this bird's done. And of course I have space over here so I could do another bird. This bird, you're looking at him from his side. So if it's a bird that is sideways, you only draw one eye because the other eye is on the other side of him. So add another bird to your paper, whether you're doing a stack of birds or birds on a branch or a wire. And be creative. Look at this idea sheet so that you can get different shapes of birds. You can even add different tails to them. On my last bird over here, I'm gonna make a bird that is a, I guess like this one, like one of these over here, just to show you that you can do any bird shape. So I'm making a line across, curve it like a smiley face. Whoops, I didn't connect well, so I'm gonna make that line extend more. Then I'm going to add an eyeball with the pupil inside. Give him a little beak and some feathers. And he needs some feet, don't forget about his toes. I think this bird looks like he's missing something when they don't have something on top of their head. So I'm gonna give him a little feathery hairdo. Now I think he looks like a chicken, but that's okay. Now my birds are complete and I'm ready to color, okay? My bird over here, I'm gonna stick with the same style. Sometimes I like it when the birds are matching. Oops. So I'm gonna make that smiley face. I'm kind of doing it backwards now, guys, sorry. Start with your line across and that smiley face connecting. This guy is gonna have some long legs. And he's gonna have an eye. I'm gonna have him facing the opposite way. So his eye is gonna be over here. Pupil in the middle. Beak. And then something fun on the top of his head. There we go. And of course he needs some wings. So now I have my 3 birds and I'm ready to decorate, add details. These birds could be hanging out on top of a house, so I could make this look like a rooftop up here. They could be hanging out in the grass or in the mud, you never know. Maybe they're sitting on top of a bird bath, so I want to draw some details like that. Once you finish drawing your birds, add in any extra details like we talked about, and then you're going to go ahead and color them. Now, here's what I want you to try out. I want you to take purple, blue, and green and try it out in one bird. You can layer them, or you can layer them meaning like you would color one color and put the other one on top. You can make a pattern with those colors, but this is your cool color family. So I'm making a little pattern with it, and this bird is going to represent my cool color family. On your birds, if you do not have watercolor, I want you to make sure that you're filling in that white space and not leaving a ton of white in between where you've colored. If you have watercolor, I'm gonna show you a little trick on how to make your paper look a lot more finished by adding in the watercolor on top of your crayon. Crayons are made of wax, and so when we take our crayons and color on the paper, the wax sticks to it, and then when we add watercolor on top of it, the watercolor cannot adhere to the paper, so it spreads around and into the white spaces where there's no crayon. And I will show you that in a second, but go ahead and make sure you're coloring this bird a cool color bird. I'm doing his legs and beak in a warm color, but because I want it to be a little bit more realistic. And then my next bird, I'm gonna create a warm color family. So I am taking the yellow, the red, and the orange to color in this little guy. I'm gonna go ahead and color his beak. Orange and yellow are pretty good colors for beaks for your bird, but they don't have to be that color. Now this one, I'm gonna make it look like a gradient, which means I'm gonna color and make it blend and look like it's changing from one color to the other. So I have to go in rainbow order if I'm trying to do a gradient. So from red, then to orange, and I'm gonna color a little bit into my red to give me that gradient so my colors are overlapping. Don't forget, you can always pause the video if I'm going too fast. Maybe you don't want to color your birds exactly as I do. That's okay. I want you to make your own style of art and come up with your own ideas too. But I also want you to learn some different tricks. So now I'm coloring with yellow, and remember I have to overlap into my orange so that it makes a smooth transition and doesn't look as striped as this one does. So I have a cool color bird and a warm color bird. And this one, I'm gonna try out something really funky because I really wanna show you how your watercolors can make your bird stand out really cool. I'm gonna do some swirls. So my swirls are going to just give me something exciting to look at on my bird, but I'm going to show you a little trick of how your watercolor goes around around your wax of your crayon. So I have my paper almost done. If you only have crayons, then I would like for you to add more into your project. I'm gonna take a little bit of a brown here on my tree branch, and I'm coloring kind of messy like this because I'm gonna add a couple different shades in here. That way it'll give a little bit of depth to my tree branch, make it look a little more real. So I'm kind of layering these different brown shades, and I'm going in the direction of the tree branch with my lines. They're going back and forth long ways with my tree branch. If I were to color up and down, it would look pretty funny because your branch isn't going up and down. So I have a lighter shade of brown. I'm gonna color that in. And you can keep doing this till you make that white go away. Now, I have watercolors, so I'm going to leave a little bit of white in here so that I can show you that watercolor trick. If this is as far as you're going and you don't have watercolors, Then you want to go ahead and color the sky. Now guys, the sky is not just at the top. When you're looking at a picture, or if you look outside your window, the sky is just not a skinny strip. It goes all the way down until you start to see houses or trees, or until you see a mountain. Whatever it is, you see the sky going all the way down. So here we have our birds, so the sky is gonna go all the way down until it hits my birds. It's gonna continue behind my birds because they're kind of up in the air, and it's even gonna go under this tree branch. If you are coloring a picture that has the telephone wire, same thing. That blue for your sky will come all the way down and even past the wire, so it'll be in the background. On this picture that I've already finished, you can see my sky goes all the way down until it hits the ground. So don't leave a big wide empty space and just a little strip of blue for your sky. Make sure it's filling in your paper. Let's try out our watercolors if you have watercolors. If you don't, once again, just keep coloring with crayon. But I would like for you to see this. I'm gonna get my watercolor brush wet. Instead of tapping to get the extra water off that splatters, I'm going to rub it lightly across the top of my cup. I have to wake up my watercolors. So actually I want a drip of water. And I'm gonna do the color, let's see, red. So I'm gonna wake him up by dripping a drop of water in there. Wake up, red. I'm gonna gently rub my brush. I'm not smashing, I'm not swirling, because that will ruin the hairs on my brush. And I'm going to take this paint over here, and notice how I'm going right across the top of my crayon, across the top of my marker, and my paint just fills in all that white space without messing up my crayon, because this is called a Watercolor Resist, which means the paint cannot go through my crayon because that wax has already gone onto my paper, and so it resists the watercolor and keeps the crayon there while your watercolor goes around it. Whoops, got out of my lines a little bit. Now he's nice and pretty, but he has this fun design. If I want to use another color, I'm gonna clean my brush by touching the bottom, 1, 2, 3. Still looks like it has some paint in it, so I'm gonna do it again, 1, 2, 3. Don't tap, instead wipe across the top of your cup. And go ahead and get whatever color you need. Now my brown for my branches, I left some space in there. I'm gonna get a little bit of this brown. This one's really dark. So I'm just gonna take a little bit and I'm gonna brush it in. And do you see how it's filling in around what I've colored? You can see that water start to move and separate. There is one thing you have to be careful with when you are watercoloring and doing a resist. If I add a ton of paint, so if I put so much paint on my brush and just pile it on, kind of like I'm doing right here, it's gonna cover up my crayon. But if I do it lightly and brush it across, it will not cover it up. So always start with less paint. You can always go back and add more. Start with less, and then if you need more, go back and add more to your brush and spread it around. So as I'm brushing it through, it's going around and filling in that space. So now I have a super cool tree branch with lots of shades of brown from the paint and from my crayons. I'm gonna clean my brush. And my last step If there is nothing else you want to add into the sky, then you're ready to paint your sky. If you want to add clouds or the sunshine, you can be creative and add whatever you want. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to do a quick background. Let me get my paint wet. Dripping some water in my blue and purple to get them started. Your watercolor starts out dry and you have to add water to get it going. And I'm gonna paint. And I'm going right at the edge of my bird because guess what? As long as I'm not putting too much paint on it and he has crayon there, then the watercolor just brushes over it and fills in any white spaces. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of purple to this sky. And I love the way watercolor mixes together really easily, but you wanna make sure it's wet. If you can start hearing your brush make a scratching sound or like a little whisper, listen. Or it makes those little bitty lines, I'm not sure if you can see them well. That means your brush is wet, or not, I'm sorry, your brush is thirsty. Your kitty cat is thirsty. I like to call these bristles your kitty cat because it's like the whiskers of a cat. And we want to make sure we're super nice to our cat so that it paints really nice on our paper. So every once in a while, we got to give him some water. Do you see how it's leaving these spaces and adding super skinny lines? So I'm going to give him some water. Add a little more paint when I see that there's not much color transferring to my page. And I am doing different colors between the purple and the blue, just in different spaces to make my sky look like it's got different colors of clouds going across it. Maybe there was a storm coming in, so the sky could be getting darker. Or if it's time for the sunrise. Whoa, I put a lot of paint here, so I'm gonna spread that out. If it's time for the sunrise, maybe you would see warmer colors, like your sunset of orange and red and yellow in the sky. Mine reminds me more of an evening sky because it's got the cool colors. So as I layer these watercolors on here, they mix together. And I'm trying to make sure that I do it to where I don't have streaks of paint. That instead the water pulls that paint around and draws it into the two colors so they mix. And I can't forget about underneath the branch. So now I'm gonna work on the bottom of my page. When your paper is wet, you have to be careful that you lift it up gently so that you don't tear it. I'm gonna take some blue and mix it in at the same time. Now I have a lot of paint right here, so I'm gonna scoop that up with my brush and move it to the other side of my paper. Instead of getting more paint in my palette, I'm just moving that around to fill in my empty spaces. Up here, I see my brush strokes, so I'm gonna take a little bit of that wet paint I have down here and I'm gonna brush it over there to hopefully get rid of that. In a sky, you usually see the colors mixing in with the clouds really well, so you don't see where it looks like it's been stroked. However, sometimes the sky does give us that effect depending on what types of clouds there are in the sky. So now I'm done. I'm gonna clean my brush. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Rub it across the top of my page. And then I'm gonna set it out to dry. Make sure you're careful with these whiskers on your kitten. My older grades, you guys know what I'm talking about when I tell you be nice to your baby kitten, your brush. So now I have a super cool painting or crayon drawing of my birds. I hope you guys enjoyed it.